Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are back with part 2 of a very special episode. This is the And As Voices episode, where we have gathered some of our favorite film friends to share their favorite films that they watched for the first time in 2025.
Yes, and having listened to all of these, there's some really good movies in here. This has been such a fun project trying, gather all of these different people who watch very different movies each year and getting them to come and just share one of their favorite films, which is basically an impossible task. This is going to be so fun. I'm so excited for everybody to listen, and thank you to everybody who contributed.
An amazing way to really look back on the year of movies and pick the one that really just resonated so deeply with you. So we're excited to hear everyone's picks in this part 2 coming up soon. We'll play the first one right now.
Hi, I'm Hanna.
And I'm Hanna.
And we are Horror Hour with the Hannas. But today we are here to talk about some of our favorite first-time watches in 2025.
Before we get to that, if you're looking to listen to our podcast, you can find us anywhere at Horror Hour with the Hannas and follow us on all the socials at Horror Hour with the Hannas.
Yep, we're on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
So,
but anyway, we're here for a reason.
Yeah, to talk about our first-time watch in 2025.
Yeah.
Did you for a second think about covering or mentioning something older, or were you always like, I want to talk about a new release?
I think I was going to. When you're in the year, it's easier to just be like, what came out this year that really spoke to me? So
I, for a second, was like, maybe I should talk about Old Boy. I watched that for the first time this year, and that was incredible. But funny enough, Movies and Us, they spent some time talking about Old Boy this year, too. They were on Revisionist Almanac, and they actually had, awarded that movie in a few different categories.
So you didn't want to talk about it again?
Jen and Sarah have already done a great job talking about it. I also thought about mentioning Sinners, but we had Jen and Sarah on our show to talk about Sinners,
Also,
so I was like,
talking about Sinners.
All right, I've done a good enough job talking about that one. So I think what I want to bring to the table is sentimental value.
Okay, you've talked about this a bunch, and I haven't seen it yet, so give us the rundown.
So I had the pleasure of seeing it early at the Philadelphia Film Festival, and it's essentially a family story. It's about this father who is, acclaimed director who wants to make his next piece, and it's kind of autobiographical. It's about his mother, and he says he wrote it for his daughter to star in, but they have a very strained relationship. And so she doesn't really want to do it. And it's kind of about their dynamic as father and daughter, and then about, his artistic process and, how he's making the film with a new lead in mind. And I think the reason why I wanted to talk about this film is because it really hasn't left my brain whatsoever since I saw it. I just can't stop thinking about it. I'm kind of worried about what'll happen when I watch it again. Will I love it as much this time? I think I will. And part of what resonated with me so much about sentimental value is just the father-daughter relationship. I think movies where it harkens back to my real life in some way, I find the most moving. Sing Sing was one of my favorite movies of last year, and I worked a lot in drug and alcohol, and people who had a history of imprisonment and, criminal charges and whatnot. So I felt that the rehabilitation angle in that movie was really moving. And I feel like for sentimental value, for example, I really relate to this strained, difficult dynamic between a parent and their child. And how do you move through that, especially when, as the child, which, I am, of course, in my parent-child relationships, when the parent doesn't really seem to be understanding where you're at or open to understanding where you're at, and they kind of want to resolve things without really putting in the work or the empathy to do that. I also love sentimental value because there's also this narrative of like putting your emotions into your art. And I think art, is so beautiful for that reason. Like you can use it to express yourself and the feelings that you're having and the ideas that you want to put out into the world. And I think it's a really great emotional catharsis. So I found that really beautiful too. And ultimately, I do think it has a really beautiful ending. I love that movie so much. I know a lot of people cried. I teared up for sure. And I just can't wait to watch it again. So
I'm looking forward to seeing it when I'm able to, since it's one I didn't catch yet.
yeah, I'm so sad you didn't catch it because I just want to talk about it constantly.
I know. Well, and maybe it'll take place in my top 10 of the year. Who knows? But for me, I'm also picking a movie from this year that I think might be my favorite movie. You mentioned not getting favorite movie of this year, I should say. You mentioned not being able to like get this one out of your head. That's how I feel about my pick, which is Eddington, which I think is wrongfully getting kind of like weird reviews. And I can talk about why, but maybe not here. But I found it to be one of the most unnerving movies I've seen this year, and also one of the most moving that really made me like reflect upon a really uncomfortable time.
Yeah.
And I loved it for that. I also think the people that are saying it's not taking a political stand are having bad media literacy, to be honest. I think it's very clearly taking a stand. I think it's just not spoon feeding it to you. And I started thinking about it a bunch, and there's two other movies that I think are quite political this year, being Begonia and One Battle After Another. And I think Eddington's better than both. And I think it actually is taking a more interesting stand and a more cutthroat kind of scathing critique with it. And I think why it works so well is it's very real, where like One Battle After Another is kind of a fantasy, unfortunately.
It's an
idealized version.
Yeah.
And I would also say Begonia is, very out there, where this movie is making us go face to face with the time we live through, face to face with our own biases, and like face to face with how people get to the places that they're in, like in terms of what they believe and how they were basically being pitted against each other for the ultra wealthy. And I really like this movie for that. And it's entertaining as hell, to be honest. I thought it was a great ride. And it's one that has just completely stayed with me all year. And I think it's not going to get any awards, which sucks. And I did I liked Begonia. I liked One Battle After Another. I think this is a better movie, as I've said. And it's funny. I don't know if I would have felt that way immediately, but as time has gone on, I really think Eddington should have been in Oscar contention, and it sucks that it won't be.
Do you think that because of like the screenplay and the performances along with that, or do you feel like in terms of total construction of a film,
total construction of the film, it's best?
I find that really interesting because, like, frankly, I think the score and the performances and other things are like more impactful in those in Begonia and One Battle, but I do think there's something to say about the story that Eddington is telling and how it's doing.
I agree with what you're saying about score. I think just in sheer and honestly in entertainment, these other movies might be better, but I think in terms of what it is saying and how I felt it affected me and like the emotions that it made me feel, I felt it to be the most impressive. Okay. In terms of like what it could do. And I think from a political standpoint, if we're looking at it that way, I think this one has the most interesting message that really makes you sit in discomfort and makes you kind of look inward, which is another reason I think people didn't in particular like it, because it's a very uncomfortable movie. It's a very confrontational movie.
It is.
With the audience. But I do think it's a left-leaning movie in its like what they're saying in the end. In terms
I do agree with
which
that.
I don't understand how people were coming across saying this is like a centrist movie. Like,
well, and people are like, this movie's like dangerous.
I think give it another shot, because I think when you really dig back the layers, this is a movie about how we are all being pitted against each other and how a lot of people use their political ideology just for self-gain only. On the left and the right. But that's not the centrist part about it. The left-leaning part about it is we need to band together against the forces that are ruining our lives. So, yeah, I liked it.
Real quick, I just wanted to shout out a few more movies that I loved from this year.
Sure.
Obviously, we don't have the time and space to
Yeah,
go through
just
them.
run through them.
But I got to see It Was Just an Accident, No Other Choice, Begonia, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You,
All great.
and Wake Up Dead Man.
How about Sorry Baby? We watched that for the first time this year.
Oh, I was saying those
the
are
ones you
movies
saw
that I
early,
saw at the
yeah.
Philly Film Festival, and
Yeah.
I absolutely adored them, and not all of them have had their wide release out at the time of recording, so I'm really excited for people to get to see them. And also absolutely adored Sorry Baby.
Me too.
One Battle was great. Weapons, 28 Years, Bring Her Back Together.
You didn't say
Excellent
Sinners?
Films. I said Sinners in the
did.
beginning
Oh,
of this
that's right.
episode,
That's right.
baby.
So. Oh, and we were joking that we both watched Eraserhead for the first time this year. And
not me, dog.
Oh, you're right. I watched Eraserhead for the first time this year, and
Yeah.
that was a moving experience. Same with Blue Velvet and The Straight Story. So I got 3 Lynch films that I hadn't seen before under my belt this year.
We have been very slowly working through our Lynch filmography, and we're going to be covering some Lynch films in 2025, so I'm pumped.
Well, that's about it, though. So thank you for listening to us. Once again, we are Horror Hour with the Hannas. Come take a listen if you liked what we said.
And thank you so much, Jen and Sarah, for providing us another platform to talk about the movies that we loved so much in 2025.
Yo, this is Kenny Sparks from the Kenny Sparks YouTube channel, where we love talking about movies. Who's we? Me. So you can find me in your YouTube search or on Threads by the same username at Kenny Sparks YT. So yo, my favorite first time watch of 2025 is Tron. Not Ares, Tron from 1982, starring Jeff Bridges. This movie I watched for the first time in preparation to see Tron Ares, as well as watching Tron Legacy literally in the theater right before Tron Ares started. Tron from 1982 is a much better experience than what Tron Ares was, for sure. Tron, the original, I absolutely adored. I had such a great time watching this movie. Why? Because it was so 80s. Now, I know one thing that people have said in a negative fashion about this movie is that it looks dated, it looks old, but to me, it looks amazing. And why does it look amazing? Because it gives me that nostalgia. Now, does it give me that nostalgia? Because essentially I was born in 1990, so this movie came out 8 years before I came out? Maybe, I don't know how nostalgia works. But what's important is it made me feel like I was back in those days of those types of video games. And what's really interesting about this movie, too, is that it is a video game movie, and it's one of the best video game movies I've ever seen, but it's the movie that actually came out before the game. And that doesn't usually happen. Usually, it's the other way around. One of the other things I found interesting about this film and this franchise is that Tron, the person whose name is plastered all across this franchise, is barely in these movies. This movie is about Kevin Flynn. Kevin Flynn is the programmer who created the Tron program and has built programs on the grid that the company who he was working with stole from him, pushed him out, and now he's working in an arcade, and 2 of his former colleagues have to go and convince him to try to go and get his programming back. So he is convinced, he goes, and almost immediately he is digitized. One of the cooler effects of this movie, you see the digital blocks of him delete, 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 and then reappear in the grid. It's really freaking cool. That entire sequence builds up this tension to it happening, and it's very effective. Now, when he gets into the grid, he's almost immediately arrested by programs who are running the digital world. The digital world hosts games, which is really interesting because what are programs doing that? I'm glad you asked. The creators of this movie did a great job of coming up with ways to give the programs personalities. There's hierarchy, there's politics. They don't want to actually participate in the games because it could be life or death for them. And they have the MCP, the Master Control Program, which is the main antagonist of the film. The MCP was created by the very man who stole the programming from Kevin Flynn, which is Ed Dillinger. Ed was using the MCP to overview the game system, but the MCP rebelled, and now the MCP is trying to take over the digital world, the games, are the best part of this movie, and honestly, the best part of this franchise. The classic Tron motorcycles, which I've seen before all throughout my life, seen Tron here and there, but I never really knew how they worked. I knew that they had the solid wall coming out from the back of them, but I didn't really know what they were for. What they're for is going and racing alongside each other, one bike trying to go in front of the other and making a left or right turn and using the wall as a barrier that the other opponent will crash into. The entire point of the game is to race around this grid, creating traps for the other racers, for the other programs. It's freaking cool. Then they have this kind of dodgeball-ish type game where they have these discus that they throw onto the floor of the other opponent to try to break the ground, to try to delete them. If it wasn't for the fact that you would actually die if you lost in these games, I would be playing them. I was engaged in many aspects of this film. I don't really have many negatives to say about it at all. It is a movie that could have been a standalone. It didn't need to turn into a franchise, but honestly, I'm kind of glad that it did because every time Tron comes out, which is usually decades between each other, the technology looks much better. Hopefully, in the future, the movies will be much better because what we saw in Tron Ares, like I said before, not good, not great. Tron from 1982 is everything you want out of an action-adventure sci-fi romp. Please, give it a look if you haven't seen it before, and if you have, let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And we are here to discuss the end-of-year collaboration project with Movies and Us. We appeared earlier this year on their, 50th anniversary of Jaws episode. I believe that was in June.
Yes.
And the first video episode for their podcast. So very exciting stuff over there. You can follow us at GMOAT Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, or your social media for that matter, GMOAT Podcast. And we are Greatest Movie of All Time podcast. But we are here specifically to discuss what our top favorite movies were that we watched for the first time this year. Now, I don't know if you put together a honorable mentions list. We're only supposed to talk about one, but I have a few that I'd like to mention just very briefly here. I had Nora, which I thought was the best film of last year and ended up winning Best Picture. I really enjoyed our episode of Ex Machina earlier this year that we did for the first time. Before Sunrise, great film that I'm glad that I finally got around to when we were putting it together for our Cinema Legacy poll project. I was starting to churn through some movies that were very highly suggested to me. Another one that you had suggested for many years, and I just put it on during, I was assembling a cabinet or something, and I just needed some background watching and ended up getting invested in the film, LA Confidential. So I'm glad I watched that one. And then Superman, which is my top film of this year of 2025. But did you have any initial honorable mentions that you wanted before we get to each of our top favorite first watches this year?
Heat. I had never seen. We did that episode a couple weeks ago on our show. I really enjoyed that film. I had not seen it before and managed to get that in. I guess that's my most honorable mention that I could think of off the top of my head. But as far as my number one or the film I enjoyed the most, that is actually a 2025 film. And I really enjoyed and loved what I consider catnip to me, which is Blue Moon. Ethan Hawke's performance was mesmerizing. I am a huge, I love history to begin with, and I even love history of entertainment. So a big person who goes back and studies the Marx Brothers and early vaudeville, and the early film history, and to spend time in the life of Moss Hart and what was Rogers and Hart, and then Rogers and Hammerstein, and seeing that whole interplay to me was just wonderful. It was the best couple hours I think I've spent in the cinema in a while, and definitely for 2025.
So my top watch or top first watch from 2025 is not a film from 2025, and it's barely a film from this century. I went with one that we watched for our show, and unfortunately you were not able to be with us. You were sick that week, but it is a film that had been suggested to me many, many times, by various different outlets and people that I listen to and whatever else. And I thought for sure, because my relationship with the director and writer is tenuous at best, because I don't particularly care for Jerry Maguire, for example, or for that matter, we watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High earlier this year, and that one really doesn't age that well to me, but Cameron Crowe's Almost Famous. I popped that on. I was invested within about 5 or 10 minutes, and that was one of the most fun watches I think I've had all year. I was so glad that I got to watch it finally, and I have a feeling that it will come up again in the near future for maybe us as a family, or, that's something that I return to on my own just because.
It was a good film, and surprisingly so. I've had some problems with Cameron Crowe myself, but yeah.
So again, we are Greatest Movie of All Time podcast. You can catch us on any of the major podcast platforms. I think we even have some of the less major podcasts, so minor podcast platforms that still haven't been consolidated or eaten up by Spotify and Apple. But you can also find us on YouTube in most of our video episodes as well. And we recently had on the ladies here from Movies and Us to discuss Raging Bull, which was a great conversation. We would encourage you to go listen to that there. You can also find us on any of our socials, again, at GMOT Podcast, wherever you follow social media. Thanks again. We're glad to be a part of 2025 and looking forward to what's coming in 2026.
Hello, what is up, you guys? This is CeCe Clemons. Hope all is well. My YouTube channel is at CeCe Clemons. That's CeCe Clemons. You can also connect with me on socials, primarily Instagram, which is at CeCe_Clemons. That's where I just post my personal things that make me laugh, music. And then also on Threads, I post there for any movies that I watch. So very glad that Jen and Sarah reached out to me to share my favorite first-time film watch in 2025. I'm actually very excited for this. As soon as I saw that question, I immediately knew it was Weapons. And I want to be mindful of those that haven't watched it. I will keep it spoiler-free. So Weapons, it's a horror movie written and directed by Zach Kreger. When all but one child from the same classroom mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. Say less, sign me up. What are you talking about? I'm there. I'm set. So I expected to enjoy Weapons, but what I didn't expect is for it to be one of my top favorite films of 2025, and I absolutely was not expecting it to be my second favorite horror movie of all time. That was a shock to me. I had to check myself, am I sure? But after several business days and 3 watches, I can confirm it is my second favorite horror film of all time. Don't judge me. So for starters, I definitely want to give applause for the marketing and the trailer not giving away too much information. I came into it with very limited information, which, seeing how things played out here, was the best way getting into it and getting out of it. That was cool how I just did that. I really, really loved the non-linear and the multi-perspective structure. I was really just fascinated, honestly, with how they were able to structure it this way, but also keep the excitement and keep the engagement. And what I will say is the cast for the kids on here, hitting us with the Sonic/anime run. First of all, that idea to have them run like that was absolutely genius. And the child actors really pulled it off. Just the stance, how they ran, their facial expressions, just giving very much iconic behavior. Unlike anything I've ever seen, it was just really captivating. The biggest surprise for me, it was funny. While it's not just a full out comedy, this was much more humorous than I expected. And one thing about me, I love to laugh. So when something genuinely makes me laugh, I'm on your team. I'm on your side. We're good. We're in this together. Let's do it. Let's do what? I don't know. I don't know. And they also delivered on the score and the horror factor. Some other people may beg to differ, but it definitely delivered there for me. I did shamefully jump a few times, so much so on my third watch, which I did a reaction video to, which is on my channel. I jumped twice, which is crazy work, and I'm still trying to recover from that. Tweaking. And the main event here, the final act, is really what did it for me. It is one of my all-time favorite scenes ever in a movie, period. It was intense. It was hilarious. It was beautiful and really emotional for me. I even shed a little tear, just one, more like half a one. The double icing on the cake, triple, whatever, is the crowd reaction. This movie is great to watch with a crowd. Just hearing the gasps, hearing the laughs, the clutching of the pearls, the "what are you doing?" like stuff like that. Stupid, the sucking the teeth, like all of that was there. I'm a cinema nerd. I love to watch the movie, but I really love the experience of the audience, of the crowd. I love hearing other people's reactions and thoughts in real time. Respectfully, like you got to know how to do it. Shouldn't be talking. Be quiet. Okay, cool. Like while this final act is happening, and I literally just sat back and like put my hands up, like, oh my God, like this is that thing. This is the thing that I come here for. I just felt like so elated, and I'm like, this is it. There's a cinema. You know what I'm saying? So happy to have had that experience in the year 2025. But thank you guys for hearing me out and talk about Weapons. If you haven't, I would highly recommend you watch. But that is my favorite first-time watch of 2025, and just one of my favorite first-time watches of everness. Relax. Thank you once again, Jen and Sarah, for having me. I really appreciate you guys. Everybody drink your water as always. That is all. Peace out.
Hello, Jen and Sarah. This is Scott Cole again. I was a guest on the Cold Mountain episode, and my social contacts are I'm at Cole, Scott, which is like all spelled out, Cole, Scott. That's at Twitter and Instagram. And then at Blue Sky, I am Scott.Cole, the rest of Blue Sky. I actually was able to get my name usual on Blue Sky because I was early, I suppose. And then Letterboxd, I'm annoyingly different than those two. I'm SS Cole 929. So yeah, follow me there if you're interested. But so for this clip, I was going to talk about a movie that I'd seen this year that it really struck a chord with me or stuck out to me for a first time watch. And I went back through my diary on Letterboxd for the whole year just to see. And the funny thing is, most of my watches from this year were movies from 1991 because I appeared on our friend Andrew's Revisionist Almanac show where we talked about the year 1991. And I've pretty much talked about all those movies on a podcast. So I was like, find one that's not 1991. So I went through and looked at the movies that came out this year, and then older stuff I went back and watched. And the one I really want to talk about is a movie that Jonathan Demme made in 1988, and it's called Married to the Mob. And it is a screwball comedy that stars Michelle Pfeiffer, and it's got a great supporting cast. Dean Stockwell was nominated for an Oscar for it. Mercedes Rule. What it is it just shows you that even when Jonathan Demme is doing what some might consider lesser work for him, I guess, or like just like kind of going off on a lark, he's like just incredibly in control of his tone and knows what he wants and is so strange and peculiar in the way he makes choices, films. It's exactly the movie that scratches like an itch that you want if you're looking for something fun from the 80s in particular. He made it right before he made Silence of the Lambs, and then would go on like with another run of great movies. It was after Something Wild, which is also great, and right before Silence of the Lambs, which is of course great. But this one's great, and I feel like it's sort of forgotten. And I think part of the problem was, I remember when I was a kid, the VHS box kind of didn't look great. It was kind of silly. It was like, I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer is gorgeous. It's just a big like shot of her smiling, but it doesn't really tell you anything about what the movie's going to be. And my biggest surprise about the movie probably, and I love Michelle Pfeiffer and always have, I think she's great. I think this is my favorite Michelle Pfeiffer performance ever because she is so funny in this movie and so like the comedic timing is perfect. She's doing an accent, which she does great. There's romance involved with her and Matthew Modine, who plays the other lead. And she's basically playing the wife of a mob, Alec Baldwin, a mob guy who, and she's on the run, sort of like trying to hide out from the mob. And she's got sort of the mob coming after her, but also the FBI. And she sort of falls for the FBI agent, Matthew Modine. But yeah, it's just,
In a way, I think comedy might be my favorite genre for Jonathan Demme, having seen like the first segments of Something Wild and this. I think he's really funny when he wants to be. And the movie's just a real marvel of timing and control. And again, Michelle Pfeiffer, just better than you've ever seen her. So I would recommend Married to the Mob. It's everywhere. I think I watched it on Tubi. So, I mean, you can find it easily. And it's a great movie if you've never seen it. And it has a great 80s soundtrack. So thanks again and happy holidays.
Hi everyone, it's Heather here, part of the Revisionist Almanac team, and you can find me at Heather J. Stewart on all the socials. Today I'm talking about my favourite first watch of 2025, and that would be a classic film that feels more relevant today than maybe ever before in its history, and that is Network from 1976, a film that parallels the world we're living in right now, unfortunately. It's a satire. It's a sharp critique of TV chasing ratings. But we're watching it in 2025 and it feels like it was a prophecy back then. We know that news has really become entertainment. We're constantly questioning what is real, what is fake, what is AI, what is #fake news. How much influence does the media have on our lives and how we perceive reality and truth today? Anger and spectacle. It's what sells, sadly. And we see this every day with viral content, not knowing what to believe, people getting angry. And this is what Network was showing us in 1976. Particularly to mention is the performances here. They are incredible, rightfully won many, many awards, in particular highlighting Faye Dunaway as the ruthless TV executive who's just looking for success and sees opportunity, business opportunity in tragedy. The script is incredible. It is sharp. It is full of lines that really hit home. Of course, we all know the I'm mad as hell moment. It's iconic for a reason and really foreshadows, I think, the collective rage that we regularly see nowadays. The ending is absurd, but is it really? Do you not know anybody, and maybe you've done it yourself, do you not know anybody who hasn't deliberately gone online to seek out some kind of tragic real-life moment? These videos are the kind of things that goes viral. It's the voyeuristic attitude or side of humans, sadly, nowadays. It's the kind of content that people are looking for. And this is what Network was also showing us. It is incredibly scary to see that nowadays. I do wonder, it didn't win Best Picture, and I do wonder if that was, a sign of the times. It lost Best Picture and Best Director to Rocky. Network, maybe just too satirical, too dark, perhaps. Rocky, uplifting, rags to riches, underdog story kind of thing that, we want to see. We want to root for Rocky. Network maybe just hits a little bit too close to home. More so nowadays, I think, even than back then. So I question, would Network win this year against Rocky if it was the current times? It's an interesting thing to think about. So yeah, Network. It's my pick. Best film I've seen as a first watch this year, 2025. Please do go and see it if you do, or try and see it on a streaming service if you haven't before. It is really powerful. It is scarily prophetic. It is full of wonder performances. Great script. Yeah, please catch up with that if you haven't. I really recommend it to everybody. Thank you to Jen and Sarah for having me, and Happy New Year, everyone.
Hello, my name is Michael Burgett, and I am the host of the Screen Nerds Podcast, a podcast for film lovers by film lovers. You can catch my podcast wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Just search out Screen Nerds Podcast, and on the socials, on Twitter at Screen Nerds Pod, and on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Screen Nerds Podcast. Jen and Sarah asked for a favorite first watch of 2025. And wow, there were several films this year that have become some of my favorite films. But I wanted to highlight a film that probably flew under a lot of radars this year, but I wanted to make sure to celebrate this film and make sure to get the word out on it. And that's the anime film 100 Meters. Now, 100 Meters is based on a manga, and it tells the story of two rival runners, Togashi and Komiya. Togashi has grown up always loving running and being the fastest runner. Komiya is introduced to running through Togashi when they meet in middle school. And over the course of the film, we see these two become friends over running. And then we see them become rivals to compete to see who the best is, who the fastest runner is, as well as we see their different reasons for running. It's such a beautifully animated film that makes you feel the speed in which the athletes are running. It has such of that unique animated style that comes from a lot of animated films in Japan. And this one just shines out just beautifully. And the story itself is so compelling, whether you're a sports fan or not. It delves into such topics as mental health. It really just drives in that competition between Togashi and Komiyama, and you rooting for them and you're wanting them to succeed even as they're rivals and competing against one another. And the ending feels so satisfying and it feels earned for what they were building up to. It's such a well-made film. I think it's not just one of the best animated films or one of the best sports films of the year. I think it's one of the best films, period, of 2025. Now, 100 Meters got a very brief theatrical run, but it's planning to be on Netflix sometime soon, and it'll eventually be available to purchase and rent. So I highly recommend when it's available to wherever you are to check it out, and I hope that you give it a chance to see it for yourself. I want to really give my appreciation and thanks to Jen and Sarah for their friendship and for the great work that they're doing. I've had a blast being able to come on and contribute to a couple of their episodes, and I look forward to what they're going to do in 2026 because they've had such a great 2025 and look forward to what they're going to do next year. So, as to wrap up, I'll do it as I like to say on my podcast in signing off. Thanks for joining in on this special end of the year episode in celebration of favorite films of 2025. My name is Michael Burgett of the Screen Nerds Podcast, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Hi, this is Will Polk, co-host and producer of the Scene and Nerd Podcast with our host, Sarah Belmont. Thank you so much, Movies and Us, for having us on your show and asking us for one of our favorite 2025 film moments. You can find our podcast wherever you get your podcast by going to our website, and that address is www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com, where you can find all our social media handles and you can follow us on them as well. Thank you again, ladies, for having us. And here is a discussion that Sarah and I had about Superman 2025. Enjoy.
But when I think about this conversation and what it meant for giving us a quote unquote introduction to this version of Clark and Superman, because it's Superman's actions, like, so, but he's Clark. So, and they do a very good job throughout the interview of the back and forth, and then as Superman off the record on it's done so well. But before I get more into that, for me, what made this version so refreshing was the cockiness, because there in past iterations he would have never said, like when the question was raised, how do you think this interview is going, and he says, well, I think I'm doing great. Like,
Exactly.
not iterations before would have not had that line, and that is so good because and it's not out of character. And it's not like you're rewind to the opening scene that I saw 10 times.
he says, "Oh gosh, Ollie," or something like that.
Mhm.
And but to me, lines like that play more into his heritage,
Yeah.
where I feel like a lot of the back and forth, especially when he was being very firm in his decisions, is just like that felt to me more of the Kryptonian side.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is what I was meant to do. I'm doing this the way I was told to,
Mhm.
partially. Maybe not wrecked. Um, and so, like, who are you to judge how I choose to be hero? Like,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that. I but more importantly, what struck me the most about this scene and why I think from what I've heard, this scene in particular sticks out so much.
Mhm.
It's because of it is a conversation that, I don't know, goes on for a good 5 to 10 minutes, it feels like. But you
Yeah.
could have had a half hour, and I still don't think there would have been complaints because it felt like a real conversation. There
Exactly.
were movement, whether it
Mhm.
was the conversation, the idea that the conversation was written like as a natural way of a back and forth, with callbacks to previous things, with them talking about these issues as boyfriend, girlfriend versus them as interviewer, interviewee.
Yeah.
So all of that, and then they would move around. You would see them, I felt like they went into different rooms, so there
Yep.
was movement. It felt like a tango, it felt like a dance, and I will take this kind of conversation scene over any action sequence any day of the week. That's just
100%
me.
of time, 100%. I completely agree. I mean, it really I like, I like that how you said it was a dance, and that's how I felt when I was watching it both times, whether the initial viewing and also on the second viewing even more so because I could really just focus in on the dialogue and this, and the back and forth between Lois and Clark.
Mhm.
And it did feel like a movement and just the, on the record, off the record, and I like the point, and that was you know, that was when you said he seemed cocky, that was
Mhm.
you're right. I felt that too, that he was very, very cocky. And yeah, and the other thing too is I know and I liked how they flipped, now that we've gotten into our discussion some, I grew up with the Superman 78, Margot Kidder, Christopher Reeve, and just sorta how, they sort of flipped the script in some ways on the interview that Lois and Clark had on Lois's balcony in Superman 78. There was still that playfulness and it was and that scene too also played like a dance because it was a true conversation. And so, but I liked here where, Lois was not sort of the swooning girlfriend or, they actually had like, real tension and, especially like when Clark just stormed out after the fight,
Yeah.
and that was a very, very real thing as far as, like, people do react that way in relationships sometimes. They don't handle conflict well, and, so he could probably take on a kaiju all day, but dealing with romantic relationships, he was it shows he's still learning.
All right. Well, that was an amazing crop of movies, some amazing picks and takes and thoughts shared about each of them and why that was the one film, or maybe more than one, that really stood out to them from the past year of all of the movies that they watched in 2025. Man, those were some picks. So, yeah, we're so excited. Just thank you to everyone that contributed to this episode and took the time and effort to record their segments. It was awesome to hear them all together, kind of back to back, and all of the different perspectives all in one place.
And they were all so different from each other, which I think is very fun. So once again, thank you to everybody who contributed. Matt and Hannah from Horror Hour with the Hannas, Kenny Sparks, Tom and Dana from The Greatest Movie of All Time, CeCe Clemons, Scott Cole, Heather from the Revisionist Almanac, Michael from the Screen Nerds podcast, and Will and Sarah from Scene and Nerd. Thank you all for contributing. As per usual, all of their links will be in the show notes, so make sure to go follow their shows, follow them on social media, and support other just intelligent, thoughtful, wonderful film reviewers and film consumers.
This film community has been so special and such a blessing to us. So we're just so grateful for everyone who is featured in this episode, for being part of our film community here on the interwebs, and all of the relationships, all the laughs, all the times they've guested, we've chatted and yapped together about movies. It's been so fun, and thank you for contributing. We can't wait to see all the things that we're all going to watch in this upcoming year here in 2026. So we'll see what the things that bubble up to the top are by the end of this year. But just, yeah, what a way to look back on 2025 and head into the new year, 2026. We can't wait to see y'all soon here on the feed with some new content from Movies and Us coming soon. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Movies and Us. We are part of the Movie Archer podcast network, so check out moviearcher.com to learn more.
Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories.
You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating review letting us know your thoughts about today's episode.
Connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us.
We hope you have an amazing week, and we can't wait to see y'all very soon.